Hello, everyone. We're going to give it a couple minutes to let everyone get on in time, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. We'll give it about 30 more seconds before we get started. We're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I am Mirkala Wozniak, and I handle communications for the clerk and recorder. I'm going to go ahead and put Molly Fitzpatrick on screen for a moment to introduce herself and say a few words, and then I'm going to take her back off screen so we can focus on the slides and the presentation content.
Great. Thanks, Mirkala. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here on a very busy time of the year with the primary coming up. If I didn't say this already, I'm Molly Fitzpatrick. I'm the clerk and recorder. I started in 2019 and absolutely love this job in love elections administration and the work that we get to do for Boulder County voters. And one of my favorite things about elections in Colorado is how transparent they are. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities to come and actually see how our process works in action. So if you have the opportunity to take this a step further and actually come visit us during this primary season, we would absolutely love to see lots of opportunities. We know that there's a lot going on with the primary season and also just elections generally, lots of information out there. And so we appreciate you all taking the time to jump on this call with us. We were able to see from the comments that a lot of you are joining because you want to be able to speak articulately and in depth about why our elections are secure and accurate. And so we so appreciate you guys being here. And we also know that if you're someone that might have concerns, questions, or doubts about our elections, that we want you to feel really welcome here and in this conversation and also just in our space. So just know that whatever brought you here, we're glad you're here. And we'll be going over some voter registration statistics, voting FAQs, and then touch on some hot topics, and we'll have time at the end for Q&A as well. So I'm going to hop off camera and go ahead and get started.
Okay, and just one thing, during the presentation, if you have a question that comes to mind, go ahead and put into the Q&A. We might not address it right away, but we'll try to get to those questions. Also, the Teams functionality is a little clunky under this new system. And so even if you had to put in your name, we don't necessarily know who it sometimes will still come through as anonymous to us. So if you don't mind just adding your name, even just before you type your question, that would be helpful as well, in case we need to follow up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start moving the slides.
All right, so who is voting in Boulder County? This slide often is surprising to people because they're not aware of how many unaffiliated voters are in our county. They make just over half of our voters at 51%. The Democratic Party is next with 37%, followed by the Republican Party at almost 10%, and then our other minor parties as well. Boulder County, we have 238,000 active registered voters. In September of 2014, we had 184,000. So that really demonstrates how much we've grown as a county and how much we've grown as a state as well. Where are our voters? Longmont actually surpassed the city of Boulder back in 2023 as having the most amount of voters in the county. So just over 71,000 voters in Longmont, 66,000 registered voters in Boulder, and then unincorporated, Lafayette, Louisville, so on. And you can just see the list for yourself. But we always like to show this because I think it's surprising to people that Longmont is now the top spot for registered voters in the county. This next slide demonstrates voter turnout between general and coordinated elections. Of course, as we all know, turnout tends to be bigger or is bigger in the general elections versus the coordinated. More information, a lot of times more enthusiasm, even though these local elections that we have are equally as important, decide local matters. And we really like to emphasize that there is an election every fall in Colorado. We have our elections in the fall every single year, coordinated or general. And we always anticipate that we're going to see light turnout based on the type of election it is. So in 2026, we should see for this June primary election, we expect we'll see results in terms of turnout similar to the 2024 and 2022 summer primary elections. So that's a little bit of good information for you. We also have all this information on our website. We have lots of voter registration statistics and voter turnout statistics, including by precinct on our website, but these are just some of the highlights that we wanted to go over. So primary 2026, there's a lot of nuances to this primary, and at the same time, it's also, we make things very easy in Colorado to register to vote and to participate. So the Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, and the Unity Party are all holding primaries. And the Libertarian Party is conducting a closed primary. And so what that means is that only those registered with the Libertarian Party can participate. So voters would need to change their registration in order to participate in that primary. The Unity Party is conducting a semi-open primary. And unaffiliated voters are mailed both major party ballots. And in Colorado, you may only return one. And if you are wanting to participate in that Libertarian or Unity Party primary, there are options, and you can see our website, or we can talk about it at the end as well. We do offer Spanish ballots in person at our vote centers, and new that as of this primary, if any voter wants to receive a Spanish mail ballot, they just need to call our office and request that Spanish mail ballot be mailed to them. Another thing we're highlighting that would be great if you could also highlight to friends and family members, this is also listed on the back of the ballot envelope. We have 2 new drop boxes as of this primary election. The first one is at the North Boulder Library. It was previously at EFA, which is a wonderful nonprofit that supports financially challenged individuals in our county. With the North Boulder Library, it's a great relocation for us because we're also going to have a vote center there, not this primary, but in the future. And so consolidating those voter services made a lot of sense. And then the Gun Barrel Library was thrilled to welcome us. We think this is going to be a more accessible location for a lot of those Gun Barrel residents. So that's what's new this year. Here's a quick hit at the election calendar. We had our logic and accuracy test, which is a pre-election voting system test to validate that the election is programmed correctly in the voting system. We had that, and we were fortunate to have our awesome Republican and Democratic Party representatives join us in that test and making sure that it was conducted accurately. And that's really the confidence that voters can have that everything is as it should be before we start processing ballots. Next big date is that our vote centers open on Monday. So those are one-stop shops. We'll go over this in a second, where you can basically get anything done that you need to: replacement ballot, vote in person, vote using equipment for folks with a disability, and have any question answered by an election judge. It is also on Monday the last day to register and be mailed a ballot, and it's the last recommended date to return a ballot via the post office. Otherwise, use our 24-hour drop boxes across the county. And then a week from Monday, the day before Election Day, we begin ballot processing center tours. We'd love to have you there. We walk through the complete life cycle of a ballot once it's received back to our facility, and we would love to have you there. This is a great opportunity to actually see all this work in action. And then, of course, June 30th is Election Day. All ballots must be received by 7 p.m. And in July, we are still moving forward with election activities. We will be receiving ballots through July 8th. That's the deadline for those overseas and military voters to get their ballots in. And it's also the last day for a voter to cure a ballot envelope if they had any sort of signature discrepancy issue on their ballot envelope. We will have our risk limiting audit on July 14th. That's the post-election audit to compare those paper ballots that voters hand marked to the cast vote record, which is a document that says how the voting system read your ballot at the time of scanning. So it's comparing the way the voting system read your ballot at the time of scanning to the paper ballot. And then we have our election certification meeting on July 20th with the Republican and the Democratic Party. So in Colorado, again, we are a very accessible state. You might have heard that other states have made it harder to vote over the last several years. We have continued to make our elections more accessible and more secure. We are an all-option state. Every voter gets a ballot in the mail, but you can also go to any vote center in Boulder County to vote a Boulder County ballot, or you can go to any vote center in the state to vote a statewide ballot. So that's helpful for people who maybe work in one county but find themselves unable to get to their home county on time on election day. They can pop into any vote center and vote on statewide content. Again, some counties, including ours, offer a Spanish language ballot in person at vote centers. And again, we now offer by mail, which we were really excited to pilot this year and hope that that's helpful to our community members who prefer to vote a Spanish ballot. And then voters can register and vote on the same day, including Election Day. And to vote in person, we do require ID in Colorado. Our election model, again, we are prioritizing accessibility, and we're also prioritizing security. And so Colorado has been regarded as a great place to be a voter because we have such a secure and accessible model. We have paper ballots that voters hand mark and turn into our office, and those are maintained as election records, and we can always go back to those physical paper ballots if anything comes into question. And that's also what we use to audit our election, which is that, again, happens after election day, but before election certification, to verify that those hand-marked paper ballots are what the voting system interpreted at the time of scanning. We also have surveillance on our voting system and on our drop boxes and ballot processing areas. We do maintain chain of custody on our ballots, so we know how our ballots are processed and how the flow goes once they're received back to our facility. We have bipartisan oversight. You know, elections are not run by just our full-time staff or by me. We have hired over 200 election judges this primary election to actually help us oversee all of these critical areas, from checking in voters, issuing ballots, processing ballots in the scan room, and to verify signatures. And signature verification is how we confirm identity in a mail ballot state. And so signature verification combined with ballot tracks is a really powerful tool to ensure that only the voter that should be signing that ballot is signing that ballot. We also have a lot of really important partnerships. Some of the most critical partnerships are with the Colorado County Clerks Association. That's a professional organization that Boulder County is a part of, and it's an organization that includes counties from all over the state. And what we do is share best practices, work to advance legislation, support each other through training, and ensuring that we're all successful, because we all run things in a nearly identical way. There's absolutely some differences across county to county, depending on your size and the needs of your county, but we all support each other regardless of political party affiliation or demographics to make sure that we're all successful, because elections administration is definitely a team sport. The Colorado Secretary of State is the other organization or entity that we rely on heavily. They support us by providing training, by issuing rulemaking to clarify how we should be implementing these elections. And we're very grateful for the great staff at the Secretary of State's office. And we also have a lot of other organizations. The sheriffs and law enforcement have been a wonderful partner in helping us to ensure that we're prepared for emergency scenarios, and that staff, election judges, and voters feel confident in elections. Journey of a ballot. So how does your ballot get from A to Z? So at a high level, we maintain with our print vendor tight oversight from ballot printing to drop off at USPS to return to our facilities. So we track our ballots from the print vendor. So we have a print vendor who prints all of our ballots. It would be, it's not feasible to print all those 238,000 ballots from our office. So we engage a print vendor to print our ballots. Those ballots are loaded on a secure sealed truck. They arrive at the Denver Postal Service for shipping, and then we monitor how that delivery is going. We have tools to see how the delivery is going by zip code, and we can always follow up with the post office if need be, if there's any questions. So that's how it gets from our print vendor to your doorstep at a very, very high level. Again, you have many options for returning your ballot in Colorado. We have 24-hour ballot drop boxes. You can return them to any ballot drop box in the state. We also have vote centers, again, one-stop shops where you can do anything elections related, and you can drop off your ballot there. Some people do like to just drop their ballot off to an election judge. That's totally fine. We support that. So feel free to drop it off at a vote center. We also offer drive-by drop-off locations on election days, and that's where voters can just stay in their car and hand it to somebody. And then Again, returning by mail is an option. We don't see a lot of people returning by mail. The vast majority of people love those 24-hour drop boxes, which is great. And again, last recommended day is Monday. And you can also just vote in person if that's what you decide to do. So the mail ballot life cycle. So if you are able to come on a tour the day before Election Day, we would love to have you. And this is what you would see if you were here with us in person. So at a high level, the first step is that the ballot is received. And so once it's received to our office, we immediately prepare it to get date stamped as received and to start going through processing. Our ballot envelopes get run through a sorting machine, which you can see on the screen as the right-hand picture. And that ballot is, again, marking that ballot envelope as received. It's also capturing an image of the voter's signature and sorting. So we like to sort based on location. And the reason for that is because we like to have as many ballots grouped together that are similar in terms of location as possible, because if we need to conduct a recount because contests are so close after the election, we like to have the City of Boulder ballots grouped together in case we need to conduct a City of Boulder recount only. Step 3 is signature verification. So again, those ballots are going through that sorter, and the sorter is capturing an image of the voter's signature. And so what that's doing is those election judges are going to see an image of that voter's signature on their screen. And so what they're doing is they are comparing that voter's signature on the envelope to previous signatures that we have on file for those voters. And so the first step is an election judge looks at it, and if they cannot immediately make a match, what they do is they escalate it to a team of 2. So a Republican and a Democrat are looking at that signature together to make a determination. And if they both agree that there's not enough there to make a match, that voter is sent a signature discrepancy letter. It doesn't mean that we're not going to count their ballot. It just means that that voter needs to take an additional step and let us know that that was them who mailed that ballot and voted that ballot in order for it to be moved forward. And we will not move that ballot envelope forward until we hear confirmation from that voter. Step 4 is vote credit and transport it to opening. So again, this is the part of the process. Once it's been verified, we transport those verified envelopes upstairs or to the second floor of our facility for continued processing. Then our ballots are our envelopes are opened. And so this equipment that you can see in the picture, it slices open the top of that envelope. So all the worker has to do is pull the envelope from its, pull the ballot from its envelope. So we're not having to make all those manual slices with like letter openers, which some big counties are still doing. So it's making a slice at the top of the envelope. The ballots at that point are going to be separated from their envelope and flattened. And this is when we have Republicans and Democrats. They're the ones actually physically removing the ballot from the envelope, and they flatten the ballot to be run through the scanner because it's been folded up. We need it to be flat to be able to run through the scanner. And they're also looking for damaged ballots. So any ballots that are damaged by food or anything that would impact the scanning process. They're going to look for those sorts of issues as well. And if that sort of issue pops up, what will happen is that a Republican and a Democrat will take that damaged ballot and they will duplicate that ballot onto a clean ballot that can be read through the scanner. Both ballots are maintained as election records, but only one is actually moved through the scanner for tabulation. Then we scan our ballots, and this is when we scan them in batches and votes are captured in our voting system. As those ballots are getting scanned, every single ballot has a unique identifier that is added to the ballot. And the reason that we do an imprint ID number on those ballots is so we can conduct that post-election risk limiting audit. So want to really reinforce that this is when the ballots have been separated from their envelope. So we're not going to know, not even we could tell who voted what ballots. It's solely so we can store those ballots and conduct our risk limiting audit afterward and know what ballots we need to go and retrieve for auditing. And then the last step is that results are generated. On election night, we will run reports. And the way that this works is we tell the voting system to create a report, and we download that report onto a clean USB thumb drive because our tabulation and scan room equipment is not connected to the internet. And so we need a way to get those results to the internet. So we download the results report, and then we take that over to our tabulation, or our upload room, and we upload results starting after 7 p.m. on election night. So how do we validate the election? Again, we talked about logic and accuracy tests very quickly before, but this is where we have election judges actually hand mark those paper ballots, and we also prepare test ballots as well. And we essentially vote those ballots, hand tally how we're voting those ballots, and then run those ballots through the scan room, and then get a report from the scan room of what we just ran through. And then we compare that report from the voting system to those hand-marked paper ballots. The hand-marked tally. And then after the election, we conduct that risk limiting audit, and that's where we compare those physical paper ballots to what the scanner read and counted. And this is, again, completed by bipartisan representatives, and every county participates unless you're such a small county, which I think only one county is currently hand counting. We get a lot of questions around signature verification and how signature verification works. So we in Boulder County have all of our ballots reviewed by humans. There are some counties that use some technology to do signature verification, but here in Boulder County, 100% of ballots are reviewed by people. They are specifically trained and specially trained and tested in signature verification, including how to look for things that are unique to voter signatures, including slants, pin marks, loops, or other character traits unique to signatures. We hear a lot of like, oh, my signature is different every time. And that is true. All of our signatures might look slightly different time to time, but there are common characteristics that we can look at to determine that that was you. Voters oftentimes have their pen rest for a second more in the same spot every time when they sign their name, or they have a unique way that they loop their Y's or sign their A's. And so our judges are trained and go through extensive training to be able to detect and look for that sort of thing. One thing we like to say is that the more you, or emphasize, is the more you vote, the more signatures we have on file for you to compare. And if you want to add an additional signature to your record, you can always come into our office and give us a signature. We're also doing quite a bit of outreach with young voters to collect more of their signatures, since they're new to signing their name on documents, and it's helpful for us to have more reference signatures. We also get a lot of questions around 24-hour ballot drop boxes. We know that voters absolutely love voting by or using our drop boxes. We hear this a lot, but there are some people that have concerns, and we want to address those concerns. So our ballot drop boxes are designed to be tamper-proof. We maintain video surveillance during elections 24 hours a day. And we can always go back and review that video footage if something comes into question. We have bipartisan courier teams, so Republican and Democrat, transporting ballots directly back from those drop boxes to our facility. And that's when chain of custody actually starts, is when they're emptying those boxes, securing them in another secure box that gets brought back to our office. And we have that everything sealed, and chain of custody is documented. And we'd like to really highlight that Ballot Tracks is another important tool here, because once you get your ballot turned into a Dropbox or mail and it gets turned back to our office, we will send you that ballot track notification that we've received it. Myth busting, questions around voter registration. So we have multiple tools to maintain a proper and clean voter registration database. We have regular checks against other databases, including the National Change of Address System, those involved with the criminal justice system, and other agencies, death records, and we're regularly reviewing and comparing the voter list against those records as well. And in Colorado, every voter is affirming to their qualifications to register to vote, which are the same qualifications to actually vote. Ballot harvesting. So sometimes we don't get this a lot, but we do get questions around ballot harvesting and like people turning in other people's ballots. So the answer to this is that it's high risk and low reward. In the mail ballot model, we do use signature verification as the tool to confirm identity. And then we layer that on top of, or we layer that with ballot tracks. And so ballot tracks is a tool that notifies voters when we send out your ballot, when we receive your ballot back to our office, and when your signature has been verified and your ballot is moved forward for processing. And so we really encourage people to sign up for ballot tracks. We do have a high enrollment of ballot tracks users. So if voters were receiving ballot tracks notifications, but also knowing as a voter that they had not turned in their ballot, that would raise a lot of questions. We've never received that sort of complaint before or concern before. And so that's something that we think really makes a lot of sense if you think about it. The signature verification layered on top of ballot tracks is how we know that there's no widespread fraud or attempt at ballot harvesting happening in Boulder County or in Colorado. No reports of this. Updating voter rolls. We do, again, regularly update and maintain our voter list. One way we do that is by participating in ERIC, which is a multi-state program that compares voter list and who voted across state lines. And so this is a really important tool. It's unfortunately become the subject of some misinformation over the years, and we've seen some states withdraw from it, which has been really unfortunate because it's just one less data point we have. So we hope that those states will eventually rejoin ERIC. We do not mail ballots to inactive voters. So if your ballot is returned to us by USPS, we will not keep mailing you, but we will let you know via ballot tracks that we were not able to, the Postal Service was not able to deliver your ballot and to update your voter registration. Trust and transparency. This is one of the most important things that I think that we could be doing right now, which is why we do so many ballot processing tours, so many events like these, to really open up the door so more people can see these processes for themselves. We don't want it to feel like it's a secret. You are welcome in our space. And just remember that elections, again, are run by your neighbors and your friends. We've hired over 200 people to help us conduct the primary election. And these are the people that are really making the decisions about voters' ability to vote. They're the one checking in those voters at the vote centers. They're the ones verifying signatures. They're the ones processing ballots and moving them forward for tabulation. They're all from different backgrounds. They all have different experiences. They all have different political party affiliations. And it's also just really refreshing just to see so many people who are working together to implement these elections despite having such different backgrounds, and it's a very friendly environment, and people just wanting to do the right thing. And everything's on camera 24/7. And just as a reminder, we really don't care who you vote for. We just want you to vote. We want to see high participation in every election. Physical and cybersecurity is a humongous deal, especially now. We have a robust physical security program. We conduct tabletops all of the time. We are training our election judges and our election workers and how to respond to emergency scenarios, how to respond to intimidation, how to respond to threat. And we're so grateful for our law enforcement partners for supporting us in that work. And in cybersecurity, we've been doing cybersecurity work for an extremely long time. We have a robust cybersecurity program. We have dedicated cybersecurity staff within the Clerk and Recorder's office, and in addition to Boulder County. And that's, our team is trained in incident response. Our team is trained in how to use all of our systems properly, making sure that we don't have more people accessing equipment than necessary. Everyone's using two-factor. We have strong badge access, so the only people who are entering secure areas are the ones doing that. So these two, physical and cybersecurity, could not be more important. So we're coming to the end of the presentation, but the last thing that we want to just say is that mis and disinformation is a problem right now. We're aware of it, and we're grateful to those of you who joined the call because you want to be able to combat mis and disinformation. So from our side, just know that our priority is to be as transparent as we can on our operations and procedures. If you don't get your question answered in this slideshow, if you don't get your question answered on a ballot processing tour, you can email me directly, you can email our staff, and we will answer. We respond to everything. So please feel free to just open up communication that way. We host lots of public tours of our ballot processing center, and we try to put a lot of information on our website as well to make sure that people have access that way as well. So our request of you is to follow our office channels for official sources of accurate nonpartisan election information. And if you see inaccurate information, if you see something that kind of makes you have an emotional response, just pause, think about it, ask questions of the person posting it, encourage them to get in touch with their local county clerk's office to ask more questions. And that really can go a long way, is just having that person reach out to their county clerk's office, because a lot of the time when people are legitimately confused and posting confusing things, it can be cleared up very, very quickly with just some transparency. We're also encouraging friends and family who live in other states. Voter confidence in Colorado, I know that there are people that don't like our elections here, and I'm, not ignorant of that. But I do think the majority of people in Colorado feel really confident about our elections. And they're like, what can we do about what's happening nationally? And that's a very good question. And so what we're saying is encourage friends and family in other states to contact their local election office to see if they have public tours, or just to create that dialogue with election staff in those other states. So national activities on elections, we have a dedicated spot on our website to ensure that the public knows what's going on with elections. So you can go to our website. We're posting when we feel like there's newsworthy information out there about what's going on. At a high level, what I would say is that we are not overly concerned at this point about Congress passing a sweeping election bill. The SAVE Act continues to be on hold in the Senate. Our bipartisan Colorado County Clerks Association is on the record as opposing that. It would create a lot of administrative burdens and without a lot of value. There's been executive orders and other federal activities, federal rhetoric that has caused states to maybe respond by changing their laws. And that's why we say, tell your friends and family to get in touch with friends and family, like in those states, to make sure that they don't miss a voter registration deadline, that they don't miss information that's changed, because things have changed. There's no doubt about it in other states in response to some federal rhetoric, and we just want to be cognizant of that. We also there's just a lot going on with elections. I think the big thing to be aware of is that, because we get asked this question about, like, are we still going to be conducting elections, all kinds of concerns. And I think it's fair given how strong the rhetoric is from the administration around voting. And we want to ensure people that, you know, there are some real challenges that we need to tackle these next few months. And in Colorado, we're going to keep making sure that our elections are more accessible and more secure than ever. One thing that is noteworthy is the United States Postal Service has created draft rules that would not impact this primary election, but the proposal would, at first read, require states to provide voter names and ballot envelope tracking barcode information to the post office. And so, you know, there's questions about compliance with that and if USPS could legally require it, and you know, those are questions that are currently being questioned. We do expect it to be challenged. It is a proposed rule and not yet in effect. We do anticipate that Boulder County and likely probably the state association will submit feedback on those rules at some point before middle of, or end of July, whenever the rulemaking, whenever the hearing for those rulemakings is over. So we just want people to know that we are monitoring federal activity and we are responding to it. And we're going to make sure that this is a great election for Boulder County voters and for Colorado. And we want to really acknowledge there's a lot of fear out there right now, and we will respond to any questions or concerns that voters have. We may not know the answer right away, but we are actively engaged in monitoring all this federal activity. And that's what we have for you. So a reminder to update or check your voter registration. If you haven't yet, govotecolorado.gov. Please include your email address so you can be informed about events like this. And then again, come to a ballot processing tour. We'd love to have you. The day before Election Day is when we'll be conducting those this year, and we'll have many more in the fall as well. So with that, I will stop talking and we can open it up for any questions.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, and if you do have a question, go ahead and drop it in, and we'll stay on for a minute or two to get those answered. And someone reported an echo, but we could not replicate it. We have someone else from the staff on their own personal device, and we weren't hearing an echo. So I suggest they drop out and come back in. Hopefully that was only that one person. So apologies if that also impacted anyone else. While we wait for a moment, just want to make like Molly said, the tour for RSVP is also on the website. Those will all be happening on Monday, June 29th. If for some reason that date does not work for you, do not fret. We will have many more days in the fall. The primary tends to just be it's a great time to come because we are conducting an election, but we have a lot more interest in the fall. So we do tend to have 3 or 4 days available at different times. And usually we're also able to provide a weekend tour. And so if the times are fairly limited just because of our ballot processing activities do happen typically during a work day. So anyway, so thank you if you can make that. Give us one more second. I don't see any questions coming in.
Yeah, if there's no questions, that's completely fine. What I would personally like to really reinforce is that if you do have concerns or questions, we're really responsive. Just get a hold of us somehow. You can email me or vote at bouldercounty.gov, reach out on social media. We will respond. So we want to make sure that you're getting all your questions and concerns answered. So
Absolutely.
Just feel free to reach out, and we really appreciate everyone being here today.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And again, just follow up. You could always just write back to the email too with any questions, and we will get back to you. And I'll be sending around it'll probably be next week, but a link to this recording and everything else. Thank you.